Welcome to the show, Erin. First, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Erin Blondeau, and I am a freelance writer and journalist, and I live in the Cowichan Valley.
So, on September 27th of this year, a story of yours was published in The Breach titled BC's Far Right is Turning the Public Against a Conservation Project. The story goes into detail about the recent restoration conservation project and a campaign of misinformation targeting it. First, can you explain the purpose of the conservation project?
Yeah, for sure. So the official Estuary Restoration Project website says that the purpose is to revitalize the health of the Cowichan estuary and to conserve biodiversity and to protect local communities. So the location of the estuary is on the territory of the Cowichan Tribes, who have used those waters to gather food like shellfish and salmon for millennia. And so conservation work on the estuary has been in the works in various ways since the 1980s. So there's been studies and monitoring and workshops to face the reality that the estuary is being polluted and losing its biodiversity. So through industries like logging and fishing and farming, lots of different kinds of pollution have been entering the estuary and impacting the water systems. So the Estuary Restoration Project is seeking to restore 70 hectares of marsh habitat by removing dikes and berms that were constructed during colonization to create farmland in the area. So the land that the Cowichan tribes have traditionally used to gather food was transformed into farmland when the settlers came. So the project now is to remove those barriers and to reconnect the freshwater channels to the ocean. A representative from the Nature's Trust of BC told me that with the current conditions and the pollution in the estuary, about 60% of the marsh habitat in the estuary will be lost by the year 2100. So that's why this project is taking place now.
And who is involved with this project?
Yeah, so there's actually quite a few groups that are involved in this project. So there's the Nature Trust of BC, there's Ducks Unlimited Canada, Cowichan Tribes, the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship, Ministry of Forests, Fisheries and Oceans Canada, Environment and Climate Change Canada, and the Habitat Conservation Trust Foundation.
And in your story, you also wrote about a town hall meeting hosted by the Landkeepers Society. Who is in this society and what is their concerns with the project?
Yeah, so the Landkeepers Society, it appears to be a group of farmers and other aspiring political folks that have helped them organize. The Landkeepers is a new nonprofit organization that started in the summer to oppose the Estuary Restoration Project. They have indicated that they want to do more than just the Estuary Restoration Project. They also are going to move on to what they say is sticking up for private property in other ways. So the Landkeepers Society says on its website that it's interested in protecting privately owned land from government overreach. And they actually say that the Cowichan Estuary Restoration Project will obliterate farmland. And the farmland is currently being used by a local farmer to grow crops in the Cowichan Valley.
Okay, and who spoke at the town hall meeting?
Yeah, so I went to one town hall. I went to the one town hall meeting in August, and there were various people in the Cowichan Valley who have been involved in politics and who actually ran in the municipal elections last year. So there was some folks who did various presentations on why the Landkeeper Society is opposing the Cowichan Estuary Restoration Project. A lot of it had to do with being concerned about things like flooding nearby properties, loss of farmland, and also loss of ecotourism.
You mentioned during the meeting there was a lot of misinformation going around. Could you give me some examples of this?
Yeah, so this is like such a complex question. But there was definitely... So I was at the town hall meeting in August, and it was obvious that the majority of people in attendance really don't believe in anthropogenic climate change, so human-caused climate change. And this was obvious because of the way that they booed and heckled anytime someone brought up climate change. So there was a few times when like a local municipal councillor mentioned that the project, that he believed the project was happening because of climate change, and the audience booed at that. So because many of the people in opposition to the Estuary Restoration Project, including those in the Landkeepers Society, because they don't believe in climate change, they're looking for reasons why a project like this would be happening. I think these conversations and these concerns are happening all over the world. As you're probably aware, there are lots of conspiracy theories growing and manifesting about climate change and also about global organizations like the United Nations and the World Economic Forum.
And here's a clip of that exchange at the town hall.
And the second one, is this part of an agenda? I did a little research this morning and I'm finding this is happening all over North America, coincidentally.
I am completely unsure of that. I do know that there's an interesting study in the Comox-Courtney area that estuary is being reestablished. So the difference in Courtney and Comox is there's not a working mill, there's not a dock, so it's an interesting parallel. But I guess sea level rise is an issue, and
ladies and gentlemen, please keep commentary to minimum.
let's say global warming is. So then, okay, if this is going to degrade into you don't believe that we're warming up,
Mr. Abbott as well, please. This is
okay.
The answer, please.
I haven't got an answer that there's a conspiracy across the world to create estuaries. I'm sorry, I'll have to do a little bit more research. Maybe you can share your research.
Talking about creating estuaries, I was talking about protecting the land for our future generations. That has been.
I think in order to understand why a community project like this has such strong opposition, we really have to look at those global conspiracies. So these global institutions like the United Nations and the World Economic Forum, they often have these conferences and reports and initiatives where they talk about the state of the world. And I think one of these initiatives that plays a really big role in the opposition to this specific estuary restoration project is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that just to kind of give some context. So there are 17 of these United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and they're basically like a call to action to countries and governments around the world. And some of the goals include things like zero hunger and zero poverty. But I think most importantly to this story, some of the goals include things like building sustainable cities and communities and taking action on climate. And so these sustainable development goals are basically like a jumping off point for researchers and governments on how to improve people's lives. And there's obviously many valid critiques of global institutions like the United Nations, but some of these critiques veer into conspiracy theories that really mix fact with fiction. So I think opposition to projects like the Cowichan Estuary Restoration Project, I think when they come in the form of climate denial, it really stems from people's suspiciousness of elitist and globalist organizations like the UN. And, you know, these organizations are made up of extremely privileged people, many of whom come from academia. So when research is like at the global level like this, and it comes from places like the United Nations, and then, you know, different climate researchers or when different groups use the research coming from the UN, it can cause this deep suspiciousness of, you know, why is this happening? So if we add climate denial into the mix and the extreme isolation that people have from traumatizing events like COVID, and then we realize that we're in the digital age of information, it becomes much easier to see how these complicated conspiracies really take hold in our communities. So in terms of the Estuary Restoration Project, the truth is that it will be removing farmland that's currently being used by a farmer, but it has been the plan for decades. And the farmland was actually sold in the 1990s with this as a plan. So it's not a secret that this is happening. And I think that now, so it hasn't been a secret that this is happening, but it seems now that the farmer who is using the land wants to fight this project because he wants to keep farming. So I think that this project has been really convenient for other political groups that don't believe in climate change and do believe in the United Nations SDG conspiracy theories. So they've really taken interest in this project because they want to fight what they view as a globalist agenda. So I think that's why they've really latched on, or that's why they've gotten involved with opposing this specific conservation project, which has, decades of research behind it to show how important such a project is.
Was there anyone at the town hall meeting in favor of the project?
In terms of the people who were presenting and organizing and who were there on behalf of the Landkeepers Society, there was no one there that I saw that is in favor of the project. And in fact, a lot of the presentations they gave at the town hall weren't even really about the science of the estuary or the science of the restoration project. Instead, they talked about farmland, I believe, in California. I guess they were trying to draw a connection to why a farmland is important for different species of birds and things like that. So there wasn't anyone that presented that was in favor of the project, but there was at least one person in attendance at the town hall who vocally supported the estuary restoration project. They actually stood up at the question and answer portion near the end to try to explain why that estuary project is ecologically important, but not a lot of it landed. And the moderator for the Landkeepers Town Hall was attempting to make sure that every time someone stood up to say something, that it was in the form of a question rather than a statement. So this really impacted how the audience could interact with the town hall messaging at the event. There was one other person who did stand up to ask, what are the benefits of this project? They explained that they had heard all the reasons why the project shouldn't go ahead. And, there was different discussions about the legality of the project, but there was no information about the benefits of it. So when this person asked that, there was no one there that could answer that question. There was no one there who was actually involved in the project. So it just went unanswered. And, I think that's really unfortunate.
As you read in your article, the land is located on areas that used to be 3 traditional Quw'ustsun villages. Did anyone from the Cowichan Tribes speak at the town hall meeting about their thoughts on the project?
Yeah, so as far as I could tell, there was only one person in attendance who self-identified as a member of Cowichan Tribes. And so after sitting and listening to presentations about why this project should not go ahead, he courageously stood up and introduced himself and said he was with Cowichan Tribes. And he asked, why haven't you included my people in this? Did you even invite us to this event? And as far as I could tell, Cowichan Tribes was not officially invited to attend this town hall. And so he actually left after kind of posing that question. One of the, I believe it was the Landkeepers Society president, responded to this person from Cowichan Tribes, but didn't really answer his question. He tried to change the subject to talk about sewage pollution in the waterways. And the person from Cowichan Tribes was frustrated and actually ended up leaving the event. So there wasn't anyone there to represent Cowichan Tribes as a whole.
And here's a clip of that exchange at the town hall.
My name is Gary Dreward. I'm a Cowichan Tribes member, specifically Tall Paulus, which is Cowichan Bay, right next to the hotel. I say I'm a little surprised, no acknowledgement from my tribe at all. You guys didn't mention us once at all. I haven't seen any sort of mention of working with us, what our thoughts and concerns are in any of this. So my question is, have you reached out to Cowichan Tribes and what are you doing to work with them, or will you just work around us? Thank you.
That's a good question. I appreciate you doing it. We did have a few other fellows that were going to come here, and we have been talking to the tribes and tribes people there. And I have to admit that a lot of them won't speak up because they're perhaps nervous or what happens within the tribe. But it's very interesting. Sorry about that. So I repeat that again. We have talked to tribes members, and of course they support what we're doing, but find it very difficult to speak up. I guess perhaps what senior people in the tribe would say. But one of their issues is to dig the rivers out, create a proper channel for the fish, do not flood this property. That's where you enhance fish. And I think we all want fish enhanced, but at the same time we don't want to ruin great farmland when we can improve the rivers. The other thing that they have mentioned to us is that they're tired of the sewer dump into Cowichan Bay. They're sick of it. It goes on tribes land, and now they want to pipe it from the tribes land all the way up to satellite channel and dump it deep down the channel because they're hiding it. And I think the tribes themselves are not going to go for that as far as going over their land. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I'm aware of that, but I'm not sure on exactly how that correlates to this. Those are two entirely different situations.
Well, it's not. If you continue to pollute Cowichan Bay, and if you want to take this out of farmland and put it into the bay, then you pollute this land as
Are you
well.
on the public sewage system?
Pardon me?
Are you on the public sewage system?
No, I'm not.
You have an input?
No, I don't.
You're part of the problem.
Pardon me?
You're part of the problem.
No, I don't have a problem.
Okay, I'm going to intervene. I'm going to intervene here. So I thank you very much for your question.
And did you speak to anyone from the Cowichan Tribes?
So unfortunately, I did reach out to Cowichan Tribes several times, and we spoke a little bit over email, but they declined to comment on this project because they had some staffing issues and because it was just a busy time for them. But they have already publicly shown support for this program. They have a really informative scientist who has shared like his thoughts on the project in a YouTube video. So they just kind of redirected me to the things that they have already said about it online, and they declined to speak after that.
And is there anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, I think I just want to add and really highlight the fact that this project is taking place in a traditional territory of the Cowichan Tribes, in an area that has been so crucial to them for gathering food and for food security in general. So when I actually sat down with Gary Drouillard from the Cowichan Tribes, who was the person who stood up at the town hall meeting, he told me a little bit about what this land was like before colonization, you know, that he knows through stories from his community. And from what he told me, the Cowichan estuary was really like thriving with wildlife and thriving with food for them. So during colonization, new diseases were actually brought by settlers. And according to the Cowichan Tribes website, these diseases actually ended up killing 90% of the Cowichan peoples. And it was right around that time that settlers came into the valley and settled in places like the Cowichan estuary. And shortly after, that's when they began to build dikes and berms to transform the estuary into farmland. So I think it's really important when we look at these projects to think about how we can move forward in a good way that will improve biodiversity, but also really live up to truth and reconciliation. And I think it's really important that Cowichan Tribes is a co-lead on this project. And I think that there was a missed opportunity at the Landkeeper Society Town Hall to have Cowichan Tribes there to speak for themselves on their behalf.
Closing us up, where can listeners find more of your work?
So, yeah, people can find more of my work at my website, which is erinkellyblondeau.com. And this article in particular was published in The Breach. So I recommend, if people want to read more about it, to go to The Breach. And to read more about the estuary project, people can go to estuaryresilience.ca and just click on Cowichan Estuary Restoration Project.
Okay, thank you for your time, Erin, and joining me on Midcoast Morning.
Thank you so much. It was so great to be here.
That's our story for the day. Thank you to Erin Blondeau for joining me today. You can find her story, BC's Far Right is Turning the Public Against a Conservation Project, on thebreach.ca, and more of her work on her website, erinkellyblondeau.com. To find out more about the Cowichan Estuary Project, go to estuaryresilience.ca. I reached out to the Nature Trust of BC and Ducks Unlimited for comment, but they're unable to speak with me before the deadline. I'm Laura McKenzie, host and producer of Midcoast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer, and Aubrey Frew is our technical advisor. You can sign up for CHOI's newsletter at choi.ca/subscribe for updates from our news department and more. Our theme song is First One by local Nanaimo band Waste Management. You can find more of their music on their Bandcamp. Support local artists by buying their music. If you have a story you would like us to cover, email us at news@choi.ca.